You're talking to someone regularly, maybe every day. There's warmth there, continuity, a sense that this person is present in your life. And then one day, without warning, without explanation, they're gone. Messages left on read, then not even read. The conversation just stops. No fight, no goodbye, no reason you can point to, just silence where someone used to be. If you've experienced that, you know exactly how disorienting it is. And if you're honest with yourself, you may even recognize the other side of it, the times you were the one who disappeared. This video is about both. Ghosting gets talked about mostly as something done to people. The pain of it, the confusion, the spiral of self-questioning that follows. And that experience is real and worth understanding. But there's a side of this pattern that almost never gets examined. The interior life of the person who goes quiet. What's actually happening inside someone when they choose silence over a conversation. Because in 10 years of sitting with people in a clinical setting, one thing becomes very clear very quickly. Almost nobody ghosts because they don't care. They ghost because something in them doesn't know how to end things any other way. That's not an excuse, it's a root. And understanding roots is more useful than assigning blame. People who ghost tend to share a particular relationship with conflict, not necessarily a fear of confrontation in every area of life. Some of them are perfectly capable of difficult conversations at work or with family or in other contexts. But in relationships that carry emotional weight, something different happens. The idea of saying, "I don't want this anymore," directly to someone who will have a reaction, produces a level of discomfort that feels genuinely unbearable. Part of this is about not wanting to cause pain. There's often a real tenderness underneath the disappearance. The person tells themselves that silence is kinder, that if they just fade out gradually, the other person will get the message without having to hear it said directly, without having to see the hurt on their face, without having to sit in that room while someone processes rejection in real time. The logic feels almost generous from the inside, even as it causes a completely different kind of damage on the outside. But beneath that surface reasoning, there's usually something older at work. People who default to disappearing rather than direct endings have often learned, somewhere early in life, that expressing unwanted feelings leads to consequences that feel worse than the discomfort of staying silent. Maybe direct communication in their family of origin was met with anger or withdrawal or disproportionate hurt. Maybe they watched what happened when someone said the wrong thing and decided very young that it was safer to manage other people's emotional states than to be honest about their own. Maybe they were in a relationship at some point where ending things clearly cost them more than they felt they could afford, and silence became the solution they reached for and kept reaching for. The nervous system learns, and what it learns is disappearing is survivable. The direct conversation might not be. There's also something worth naming about the specific anxiety of being seen as the one who caused pain. People who ghost often carry a profound discomfort with being perceived negatively. The idea that someone is sitting somewhere thinking badly of them, feeling hurt, feeling rejected, feeling discarded, creates its own particular distress. And here's the part that sounds almost paradoxical, but is clinically very consistent. Sometimes ghosting feels like a way to avoid that distress. If you disappear without explanation, you don't have to witness the reaction. You don't have to hold the image of someone hurting because of you. The silence becomes a way of not knowing, and not knowing feels more manageable than the alternative. What they don't fully reckon with, at least not in the moment, is that the other person's hurt doesn't disappear just because it isn't witnessed, it just happens out of sight. People who ghost also tend to struggle with a specific kind of emotional claustrophobia. Once they've decided internally that they want out of something, a friendship, a romantic connection, even a professional relationship, The continued presence of that connection starts to feel suffocating. Every message that comes in is a reminder of the conversation they're not having. Every notification is a small weight, and rather than relieving that pressure through honesty, they relieve it through distance. They pull back incrementally, respond slower, offer less, and eventually stop altogether. From the inside, this can feel like a gradual fading rather than a decision. They didn't choose to ghost, they just kept not choosing to address it until enough time had passed that addressing it felt even more impossible than it did at the start. The cost of this pattern tends to accumulate quietly. Most people who ghost don't walk away clean. There's usually a residue, a low-level guilt that surfaces at unexpected moments. Seeing the person's name come up somewhere, a song that was shared, a place they went together, the unfinished quality of something that was never properly closed tends to stay in the body longer than people expect. There's also the relational cost that's harder to see in the moment. Each time someone resolves discomfort through disappearance rather than honesty, the pattern reinforces itself. The threshold for what feels too difficult to address directly gets lower. Relationships that could have been navigated become ones that get abandoned, and over time, the person may find themselves surrounded by connections that never quite deepen, because depth requires exactly the kind of direct presence that the pattern keeps avoiding. Some people who ghost frequently also carry a quiet belief that they're somehow uniquely bad at endings, that other people know how to do this thing they can't figure out, that there's a conversation that happens in those moments that they simply don't have access to. What they're usually describing, without naming it, is a skill that was never modeled for them, not a character flaw, an absence. For the person who was ghosted, understanding this doesn't erase the hurt. It shouldn't have to. Being disappeared on, regardless of the reason behind it, leaves a particular kind of wound. The absence of explanation means the mind fills the silence with its own stories. What did I do? What was wrong with me? Why wasn't I worth a conversation? Those questions can persist long after the person themselves has stopped mattering. What's worth holding on to is this. The ghosting almost always says more about the other person's relationship with discomfort than it says about your value. The silence wasn't a verdict, it was a limitation, dressed up as a decision. What both sides of this pattern share is a need for the same thing, arrived at from opposite directions. The person who ghosts needs to develop enough tolerance for relational discomfort to stay present through an honest ending. The person who was ghosted needs enough self-knowledge to not absorb someone else's avoidance as a reflection of their own worth. Neither of those things is simple, but both of them begin in the same place, with enough understanding of the pattern to see it clearly, to recognize it for what it is rather than what it feels like in the moment. And that recognition, quiet as it is usually where things begin to shift. If what was described here resonates, whether you recognized yourself in the person who disappeared or in the person left behind, take a moment with that. Recognition is rarely comfortable, but it's always where understanding begins. Thank you for watching.